David D'Onofrio, CEO and Director of White Gold Corp.
White Gold really only exists because of innovation in exploration technologies. You look, we're in this district that's, had this prolific history over 100 years, all this gold on surface. Why was it that, nothing from a modern day exploration, point of view was done there for so long? It's in Canada. This, mining exploration is what we do. And the answer is the terrain and environment there is a little bit different. It was actually not glaciated, believe it or not. So unlike how Francis mentioned, talking about, the effects of the glaciation, this didn't occur there. And because of that, there's also not a lot of outcrop. So the typical prospecting methodologies that have been deployed across the majority of Canada and many parts of the world just really don't work. So, when someone's tools don't work, they will avoid that area. So this is where Sean's big breakthrough came. He was there. He had this thesis. He said, okay, well, how can I innovate to improve these methodologies to test these theses? And it was through his time there, he was able to innovate and develop a number of different unique approaches to be able to evaluate the prospectivity of finding these different mineralized systems. And it started with the soil geochemistry, and he was able to tune into different pathfinder elements. Obviously, we're searching for gold, but sometimes you have to look for these other pathfinder elements to give you a sense of what that indication is. So a big part of that is the reason that led to all this success and our continued success, and the recent new discoveries we've had. But the other part of it is, the area is a little bit remote. It is seasonal. So you have to find ways to be able to do things more efficiently and more cost effectively. And the junior companies in this industry are great for that because they have limited resources. So they are forced to innovate a lot of the time. And it's through this evolution that we're able to continue to sort of have this success in our industry. So credit to him for all these things. Are these replicable, these technologies? They are. And part of our sort of ethos is to share our innovations with everyone else. We're one player in a district. The more success that will happen in our district will lead to more investment in the district, and I think that'll sort of help the industry and our local partners as a group. So it's something that we look to do. It's evolved. Now, maybe we'll get into a little bit later. It's become quite a sophisticated methodology. Termed as drones to drills, right? So if you can think from 120 years ago, the prospector and all the pictures with his panning in the river in his boots, now that process starts with a drone. So a lot has changed, but it's great to be a part of that. Junior companies have limited resources, and before junior companies exist, it's the prospectors that are out there doing it on their own dime to try and come up with something with good enough prospectivity that someone else is willing to invest in it, and that's first and foremost. Obviously, there's other reasons to innovate, and as Neil mentioned, I think most likely it's all three of these reasons are part of why people want to innovate or need to innovate. And as Francis said, that's certainly been the genesis of White Gold, right? It was Sean up there 20 years ago on his own dime with this theory, trying to figure out how to do things. And I'll give you sort of a little bit of example of part of our protocol, how it works, and you'll see the innovation and the evolution of the innovation over time and the continual evolution, which is nice about innovation, right? That there's always something you can do a little bit better. I mentioned the geochemical sampling, and Sean started doing that on his own, and he grew his team, and he figured out how to do that efficiently. And basically, at the early days, it was just him, and he tied up all these claims, the majority of which are now in White Gold, other than the ones that were, had the big discoveries early on, like the coffee, which Newmont now owns. And so we have this 1 million acre land package. Like, how do you go and get a sense of what that could look like? He started with the geochemical sampling and built up this massive database. I think we have somewhere near 500,000 samples. It's a true district scale approach where we're looking at the entire region. But from there, you need to start filtering down the prospectivity. Now, where you want to go from early stage prospecting, and the end goal is your diamond drill, right? That's sort of the real truth teller in our business. And how do you get there as efficiently, effectively, and being as sensitive to the environment as you possibly can. And the typical protocols are there, but how can it be done better, and how can it be done more cost effective? So the approach that's been developed by Sean and in use with White Gold. So once you've identified this mineralized system with the soil sampling, you need to start to look at what does the bedrock look like under that. Typically, that's been done with a lot of trenching. Right, it's effective, but it's there's significant disturbance. You're carving up the side of this pristine country. Of course, there's reclamation involved, and most people will be good about that. But there's a lot of incidences where that doesn't happen. But we've actually developed an approach which avoids all that together, and it's called it's basically a geoprobe. It's called the GT probe, and what that does it basically it's a hammer drill that'll just go deep enough to get into the interface of the bedrock. So now you're pulling up what is the size of a pop can versus carving up the size of the concrete. These things are rubber track mounted. The disturbance is absolutely minimal, and one other benefit there is there's less of a tendency for invariability of sampling. Right, when you're in a trench and you see one rock versus another, maybe the geo in there might pick up the better one to take in a sample bag or something else. This is totally random. Whatever comes through the ground comes through the ground. So that's our step of getting that first indication of what the bedrock might look like. If the results from that continue to show prospectivity, typically the next step would be drilling. Diamond drilling is often the case. Of course, this needs to be supported by geophysical type work. That stuff's kind of done either before or during. A lot of this is helicopter or fixed wing flown. We've been able to start to actually integrate drone technology to perform some of these. Now you're talking about the carbon emission reduction significantly by using a rechargeable drone versus an airplane or a helicopter. So again, something that's really resonated well with ourselves from a cost perspective, from an ESG perspective. But before the diamond drilling, this has really been, I think, the big game changer for us and for Sean, is we've started to use a track-mounted rotary air blast drill. These are much smaller and they're much less expensive than diamond drilling. And in our case, because this is such an underexplored territory, we're really starting to look for indications of mineralization right at surface. So this can let you test the first 100 meters of the bedrock very quickly and very efficiently. So that gives you a great idea of what's there. Now, how can that be improved further? And what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years is a couple of things, and this is some really great technology. There's a tool called an XRF gun, and that'll give you an indication of what the mineralization is on a real-time basis in the field. So when you have a short season like we do in the Yukon, normally you have to send some stuff back to the lab. Who knows how long that's going to take? In the last couple of years, I think we've all experienced tremendously long lab processing time. Well, now at least we have an indication of what's there. Now, for certain minerals, it works better than others. Not the greatest for gold, but for example, on the Yuli's Ridge drilling we did this year, we know that there's a high correlation with arsenic. So if we're getting great arsenic numbers in this samples, that's going to give us confidence to continue to drill in that area and chase down this arsenic versus having to wait 2 or 3 months and maybe run out of time for the end of the season. So that's been a great, and once you're there, once you're set up, that investment's been made. So the more work you can do while you're there, obviously from a cost perspective, that's ideal. And another thing that Sean's been able to implement, which has been even more, I think, of a game changer, is the criticism with grab drilling is you don't get core. So the geologists need to see the core to see the structural orientation. But what they've been able to do is use a downhole optical televiewer. So basically, you don't get the core itself. You're able to drop this camera into the hole, and you get a picture of what the outside of the hole looks like. That gets fed, real-time basis through Wi-Fi and the satellites, back to the geos in the camp, and by the next morning, they can get an interpretation of what that looks like. So we're able to harness a tremendous amount of data in a very short period of time to advance these targets a lot more quickly than historically they've been able to. And obviously, if you're checking all the boxes through that process, the last step is to bring in the diamond drills. Yeah, we were actually been very fortunate over the last couple of seasons. These techniques have been really successful. Last year, we actually had 2 major brand new discoveries. Probably the one that got the most press was on our Betty property. This is contiguous to Newmont's gold deposit. It's also just north of the Casino deposit, the large copper gold porphyry that Western Copper owns. It's on a target called our Betty property. This is our first ever diamond drill, so we've gone through this whole protocol that I mentioned, and we were able to have some incredible results. The highlight hole was 50 meters of 3.5 grams. So we will certainly, be going back there to do a lot more work. What's even more exciting about that area is, it sits right on the same fault system that hosts that coffee deposit. We have 6 other targets that we've identified through the soil sampling and then the drones to drill protocol that will be on deck to do some more work this year. We were able to, get fully financed after announcing those results. Our partner, Nico Ego, topped up to 19.9%. So keen to get back out there and start working on that. We also had another discovery on our Yuli's Ridge target. This is just a couple kilometers west of our flagship Golden Saddle deposit. We just announced that last week, actually, where we have about 20 meters of 7 grams. So, very high grade, near surface, brand new discovery. This target's actually contiguous to one of our other targets called the Ryan Surprise, where we've done quite a bit of work over the last couple of years with the goal of trying to increase our total resource base. We're at about 1.8 million ounces now across all the categories. And as opposed to just trying to delineate our flagship deposits, to sort of systematically grow them, as a junior, we feel we get our best bang for our buck and return on our investor dollars by going out to find new zones of mineralization, and especially in a close proximity to deposits, the best place to find that. So great success there. Very keen to follow that up, and we think that they may even connect together, so that's exciting to do. And in the background, we are continually working up this early stage protocol on the balance of our big portfolio to bring up new targets that hopefully have even more discoveries. Lots going on. We're very excited. I think that, in the last little while, though, there's probably been an accelerated advancement. Now, that's part of that is just the general acceleration in technology we've seen across every industry. A lot of that's being worked into, the existing operations, but we're also being forced to do it to some degree as well, which, listen, I'm a proponent of it, but, people may not otherwise not want it to, they have to, right? I think in these tier 1 jurisdictions where, like Canada or the US or Norway or Europe, where, there's great places you want to be operating, there's stable economies, there's, well-known legislative protocols for being able to advance. If you want to work there, and a lot of these times, the lowest hanging fruit has been found, you got to figure out ways to be able to do it better, right? I think that's part of it, and so you're forced to sort of do that if you want to be competitive in that environment. And there's just a lot more out there that in terms of opportunity. Now you're starting to see modular nuclear reactors. Well, that could be game changers. There's a lot of big deposits that may not be in the greatest place from accessibility. You got to bring energy there, but you put a small nuclear reactor there, that can be a game changer altogether. So I think it's picking up, and I think the market is starting to demand a little bit more, which is good too, and that'll push things a little bit further, right? And again, people, big companies will do things either because they want to or because they think they'll be rewarded for different reasons, and hopefully it's for the former and from an altruistic perspective. But now we're seeing personless electric vehicles being used in mining, for example, right? That's the benefit. It's safer. It reduces carbon footprint, etc. So there's a lot more happening. I see. I'll say in the last 5 or 6 years, and I saw maybe the last 5 or 6 years before that.